There are moments in people's lives where you remember things, like you had a good day, or like my wedding and the birth of my kids. I remember those days. You ask me what I remember from that day. I remember those days as being very happy. I remember what happened, and then you kind of forget, and oh yeah, I remember that, and you don't remember exact details of everything. But I remember with amazing detail kind of everything that happened that day.
At the time, we didn't know if New York City, if the whole town was under attack. We had no idea. So we were all glued to TV sets trying to figure out what was going on.
I was on the phone with a friend of mine, didn't have the TV on, just kind of chit-chatting away, and her husband came in and said, flip the TV on, a plane's hit the World Trade Center.
He's sending all of my units to the Verrazano Bridge. I don't know what's going on. What's going on, please? A plane crashed into level 4 of the World Trade Center.
Hello, ma'am?
Send every available ambulance, everything you got, to the World Trade Center now. We got an ambulance full of people, and we're being bombarded with so many we can't handle.
This is the first time I've talked with anyone publicly about what's happened.
I was working at New York City Opera, and we were supposed to open the season for New York City Opera either that night or the next night.
I was down in Florida. I was 36 weeks pregnant with my daughter.
It was a beautiful day. It was slightly cool, not a cloud in the sky. Walked the dogs, came back, got in the shower, getting ready for work.
Started out to be a nice day. Didn't end so well.
The lights flickered a little bit, and I didn't hear any sounds, but there was a vibration.
Actually, a friend of mine from New Jersey had called that morning and woke me up, and actually the phone went dead for a while after that.
But I'm looking out the window, and I'm not knowing what's going on. I just heard a loud explosion. It sounded like a cannon fire. So I saw paper flying by the window. And I figured, oh wow, this might be kind of cool. Maybe there's some kind of parade. There's a ticker tape parade. Let's go check it out. So I looked out the window and looked up to the South Tower and saw a huge gash in the tower with smoke pouring out. And I was kind of shocked. So I got dressed and ran out to the street.
I did turn on the TV and I saw what was happening. And the gravity of the situation just hit immediately.
So I walked around my building and started walking up the alley behind me and went up closer towards the World Trade Center to see if I could find a fireman or policeman to find out what was going on. I had worked out an arrangement with my bell guy that he would keep people in the building, and I would go find out what's going on, come back and report back to him. We're walking towards the World Trade Center, not away from it, but we're trying to get people in our building and people who are in the street to get them back.
I am one of the 9/11 families. My brother Billy, who was the oldest in the family, was a New York City fireman on September 11th, and he was one of the firemen killed. He was a captain in Engine 21. You paid attention to him, and I think it's mainly because he was sincere, he was likable, he listened to people, he engaged people, and again, I think that shaped a little bit of what made him do what he did on September 11th.
It's almost like a surreal dream to think back to that time.
As I'm walking up, you start looking up in the building and you realize something's really, really wrong. And you see debris falling off of the building. And then you see larger pieces of debris falling off the building. And then you see a bigger piece of debris falling off the building that's falling very fast. And you kind of look at what that is, and then you realize that piece of debris has arms and legs.
Billy followed in my father's footsteps in terms of going into the fire department. On the morning of September 11th, they hadn't gotten the call yet to go down, but he gathered his men, said, let's fill up, everyone get their supplies ready, fill the truck up, as much supplies as we have. He called my sister-in-law, who was working at the time at the Sheraton Hotel on 53rd and 7th, after the first tower had been hit, and told her to get out of the city. He said, he told her that it was a terrorist attack. People hadn't known it yet. It's just, I think, 20 years of being a fireman, his gut told him, a plane hitting the North Tower where it hit wasn't an accident.
The tunnels and the bridges were all closed. We just couldn't believe, what we were seeing and the devastation. And we found out later that, we would hopefully open soon enough, but there were no plans. I mean, there were fighter jets flying over New York City. I mean, we didn't know what was going on.
Then the second tower hit. They got called down. They went up. They reached probably about the 27th floor. They had encountered a group of people from Blue Cross Blue Shield. It was two men. One of the men was Ed B.A., was a paraplegic. He had been hurt in a diving accident years before, and he was confined to a wheelchair. He was with another coworker and a good friend, Abe Zolmanowitz, and they heard a horrible rumbling. Billy came back and said, the South Tower just collapsed. You got to get out of here.
Right at that moment when I looked up, the building, if you look at the South Tower when it comes down, it kind of leans and twists and then falls into itself. Well, when it leaned and fell, it looked like it was falling right on top of us. So, like any other former athlete, the first thing that you do is you turn and run.
There's been a major collapse in the tower. The command center out here, everybody has... There was a major collapse. One of the towers has collapsed. I repeat, one of the towers has collapsed. Trying to recoup. We lost all units here in this area.
So I see, there's debris falling all over the place, and I see a door off to my left, and I dive into this back door, shut the door, and then you hear the rest of the rubble hit the side of the door. And when I came out on Board Street, it was completely black. It was black, but it was a kind of a gray black.
There was a debris cloud that would move up the Upper West Side, and you could smell it, you could see it.
And the smell from the burning, the fuel and all the chemicals that were burning was so pungent that it literally would burn your throat and your lungs as you're walking up.
Billy ordered the men of 24 to go down. He got on the radio, called his men from 21 and said, start evacuating, get down, meet at the rig. I'm stressing that meet at the rig because the men have told us that's what saved their lives. Had they stopped on another floor, had they stopped in the lobby, had they stopped anywhere but at the rig, they would have been crushed when the North Tower went down.
At that moment, I saw a lady that worked at the restaurant across the street from where I lived who was completely hysterical. It was very hard to check for people's injuries because everybody was covered in gray. So you could have a cut on your arm, but it would be covered in cement dust and you couldn't tell that someone was bleeding out. So I checked her very carefully to make sure that she wasn't bleeding, calmed her down. At that moment, when I walked her back to the restaurant and then I looked to see what was going on at my building, I realized that if she was having problems, there was probably a lot of other people that were having problems. And you could actually hear the screams and moaning and people calling for help. So we walked up the street to try and find out if we could help anybody. When we got a little bit further in, and that's where we started seeing bodies. A couple minutes later, a fireman grabbed me and the guy who was next to me and said, I appreciate what you guys are doing, but you gotta get out.
Billy stayed behind with Ed and Abe. Ed called his family and said, we're on our way down, the firemen are here. They kept going down the stairs. They got to the lobby, they got out of the lobby, and the building collapsed. Unfortunately, that was the last time we heard from Billy, Ed, or Abe. We know some of the story because Billy was the only man in Engine 21 who perished that day. The guys at Ladder 6 all survived. The guys from 21 and 24 credit Billy. They say it was his leadership, his courage, and his knowing to say, meet at the rig, get out, meet at the rig, and the rig being the fire truck, saved their life.
Mayor Giuliani had asked the people in the city to get back to life as normal as soon as possible while we dealt with the situation so that people would know that New York was continuing to thrive. Even though it was attacked, it would survive. As far as we know, we were one of the first theaters to open with a show following September 11th. The first thing we did was we all gathered on stage and we had a fairly large American flag and we sang the Star-Spangled Banner. Everyone in the audience, on stage, were all crying.
Over the next couple of days, again, I a million years would never have thought that my brother would die. I thought, well, for sure he'll find a way. He's his superhero.
Reconciliation is a very personal type of term to me.
It's taught me to appreciate every day. It's also taught me to tell the people that I know and that are my friends, that are my family, to tell them every day, I love you, I cherish you.
I tell people I take very much pride in what my brother did that day. He was a leader. He showed courage.
It took a while to kind of come to grips with what had just happened, although you come to grips with it. So long-term effects, yeah, I can honestly say that there is a day in my life that I will think about every single day for the rest of my life. I will have that memory with me every day. And it's one of those things that I remember every day. It's not like I can have a day where I don't remember what happened. I don't see the building coming at me. I don't see the people in the street. I've just tried to channel that energy into something else.
I still believe in goodness. I understand there's evil out there. I understand there's dangers. But I believe that we can make a safe world.
So I've kind of reconciled the fact that, it's on me and it's my responsibility to move forward.
I tell my children that you have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing to put yourself, the needs of others besides yourself, because that's what my brother did that day.
I imagine if I had to tell my kids something about this, that it would be that there was a tragic event that happened. Yeah, Daddy was there, and try and make good of it in that, it's got to be some kind of lesson. I haven't yet thought about what I'm going to tell them, and I imagine I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to work with my wife to figure out what that message would be, because I don't think I can tailor the message. I'm going to tell the message the way I see it, and I'm going to need her help to help me with that.
My brother could have survived that day. He could have left. He didn't leave because he was the captain. He told his men to get out, and he stayed behind because he was the captain. That's what I hold on to. I know that if he had survived and his men had died, it probably would have killed him more.
I think we just have to put this event in perspective and make sure that we remember. And to quote Elie Wiesel, he said, "To forget the dead is akin to killing them a second time." So we need to remember what happened, and we need to honor their lives, and we need to honor their lives by making our lives as fruitful and full as possible, because they lost their lives, and to honor that and just continue and make America as great as it can be.